Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we are going to be taking a first look at Victoria 3, a new grand strategy game which comes out on October 25th, so if you're watching this live, that is tomorrow, by Paradox Interactive. I think I already said that. But this is a grand strategy game that takes place during sort of the era of Victoria, if you will. It extends past Victoria's reign into the 1930s. It actually starts in 1836 and then runs until 1936, sort of the Victorian age. I think that's a little bit longer than the Victorian age usually lasts. Usually you say the Victorian era kind of dies with World War I. But in any event, it kind of runs right up to the start date for Hearts of Iron 4. So I don't know if there's going to be any kind of plug-in tie-over where you can carry your game over. I don't know that would make a lot of sense, because this game is really fundamentally a game about sort of building economies and industries. And while there's a big part of that in Hearts of Iron is much more military centric. Victoria has militaries, but they've actually in Victoria 3 abstracted out a lot of the micromanagement of armies. So you manage generals, you build barracks, you raise, you build your military industrial complex up through your economy. But you don't directly move little armies around the map, aside from assigning them to a front line and a general and and raising them, those kind of things. So it's much more abstract than something like Hearts of Iron 4, but we'll dive into all of that. We're going to be playing a new game here today. I've played a little bit of the game so far, 3 or 4 hours-ish, kind of familiarizing myself with some of the mechanics. We've also I've watched through the tutorials and whatnot on Paradox's YouTube channel, which, by the way, they're really good and pretty short, so check those out if you're interested in getting a quick sort of heads up about the game. What I will say is this is still very much going to be a first impressions series, so we very may well torpedo our economy pretty quickly, and we'll find out. We're going to be playing today with, I think, a country that I'm hoping has a lot of action, but is also not too much, and at least for the first few years should be a little bit easier. That does mean we're not playing anywhere in Europe. I do want to do an Ottoman series, because the Victorian era, to me, in many ways, is the decline and fall of the Ottoman Empire. You could rename Victoria Ottoman Sunset if you really wanted to. Maybe that'll be a DLC down the line. Because it really does coincide with sort of the rise of nationalist movements in the Balkans. You can see Serbia is newly formed. I believe Greece got its independence less than 10 years before the start date of this game. And the Ottoman Empire is still huge in its own right, but it is beginning its inexorable decline. Egypt had been lost a while back. I guess they haven't actually taken back Palestine and whatnot from Egypt yet. That happens later, but and I think some of these other, like Tripolitania is a subsidiary or I guess a protectorate of the Ottoman Empire. But yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting period for Eastern European history that I don't think we talk a lot about. This is an era, and I think a game that will focus very heavily on Western Europe, sort of the imperialist sort of race to Africa, if you will. And you can see most of Africa at the moment is uncolonized. But that will change over the course of this game, undoubtedly. India is colonized by the British, but it's actually ruled at the moment by the East India Company, which is kind of like a quasi-independent British company, if you will. Britain hasn't taken over direct control over India yet by 1836. The Great Qing dynasty in China still exists. We haven't had the Opium Wars or anything like that yet. So Western sort of intervention in China is somewhat limited. You've got Portugal, who has, is it like, I forget the name of the city down there that they have. But there's not a ton of treaty ports here yet. But we're actually going to be doing something a little bit different than I assume a lot of channels are going to be doing. We're going to be looking at the Western Hemisphere, which tends to not be the focus of the 1830s. And we're going to be looking at a country that I think, hopefully, maybe could be a power in its own right, and certainly geographically is a power at this stage. We're going to be looking at Mexico tonight. Mexico starts out as a minor power, the 28th ranked power in the game at the start. It starts off at war with the independent Republic of Texas, And so we're already at war at the start of this game. We'll see if we can quickly defeat the Texans. And then presumably inside about a little over a decade, we may end up in a war with the United States if things follow the historical timeline. Now, US's GDP, 28.5 million, Mexico, 4.2 million. Pretty big discrepancy there. Military for the US only has 11 soldiers at the moment. Mexico has 10, but if they do mobilize reserves, we're in trouble. US Navy, Mexico doesn't even have a freaking Navy at the start of the game. But Mexico does feel like a country that could be an interesting game or interesting country to play as in Victoria. Obviously, if you have a conflict with a major power brewing, you have a lot of room for expansion if you're looking at sort of taking advantage of the native tribes or perhaps using them as a buffer to slow down westward American expansion. Additionally, you do have the option potentially of driving into the newly independent Central American states and just sort of building up a largely rural country and seeing if you can effectively industrialize and sort of centralize Mexico's power. I'm curious to see what we can do, but it also doesn't feel like something like Great Britain at the start of this game where it is completely overwhelming and you can't do anything. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and check Mexico. You can see 28th ranked power, 10 battalions of infantry at the moment, GDP of 4.29 million, a population of 6.95 million. How does that compare to the US? 15 million. So America has more than twice the population of Mexico right now, and that will only grow, I assume. Arable land is pretty damn impressive, largely because of a lot of these territories in California and sort of the American Southwest in modern America. But 1.3 or 1.03 million or 1.03K, which I'm assuming is million in millions, 1,000, 3,000 arable land. That's about half, a little, actually less than half of the US. But it is considerably more than, well, maybe not. Canada's not one thing right now. But it's a lot. It's a lot of arable land. I mean, so in terms of like farmland and things like that, which actually could be a bad thing too. You can feed your people, but can you actually like modernize and industrialize? Literacy, 22%, about half of the US. Standard of living is impoverished at 10.3. US is impoverished, but they're at 12.7, so considerable advantage there. Cultures are Mexican, state religion is Catholic, and the government is actually a military junta. So it is a military democracy, I think. Although a junta is usually not a democracy, it's ruled by the military, so we'll have to take a look. We'll go ahead and turn Iron Man on because why the hell not? And I don't think I'm going to mess with any of the other game rules. I guess right now AI aggression is set to low. Should we turn that to medium or standard? Fewer diplomat plays. More diplomat plays. Oh, we'll just set it to standard. Formable nations all enable AI behavior toward players. AI countries will act friendlier toward player countries and treat them more leniently. Just set it to standard. That might be playing on hard mode as Mexico, but we'll see. That doesn't sound fun, CO. I understand M as million, Steve. My point was, though, is if it's 1.03K or 1,030,000 or whatever, if it's like in thousands and it's more than 1,000, that actually rounds to that's a million. 1,000,000 is a million or whatever. Anyway, let's see here. So we are jumping in as Mexico. You can see, hey, it's Mexico. And then we've got this war going with Texas that we'll have to take a look at here in a second. Our provinces sort of range all the way up to the Great Plains and into Mexican Colorado, all the way up toward California, Nevada, and Mexican Utah. And then they kind of stop there. Oregon is actually currently part of the British realm. Road, do I mind? I don't directly mind. I may not listen to everything you're saying because I'm still figuring the game out, but All right, so we've got a whole bunch of options along the left side of the screen here. We've got a politics window here. This is our current leader of the junta and the government. It is Miguel Barragan. Might be pronouncing that wrong. If I am, I'm sorry. I believe this is his second time as the president. He was briefly overthrown by Santa Anna shortly before this game starts, and then he came back into power. The factions in our government are the armed forces and the landowners. So there are multiple different factions and whatnot that can make a government up. If we go to reform government, you can see these are sort of the interest groups in the, I prefer factions, in the government, armed forces, and landowners. I'm not sure why the landowners are part of the government if it's a military junta, but whatever. The Catholic Church is in the opposition party. The intelligentsia is in the opposition party, and the rural folk are in the opposition party. I don't see... We'd have to go and take a look at some of the different groups here, but these essentially are the five largest groups. We could reform the government and bring these parties into our government to widen our power base, because right now you can see we only have about 43% of our of a clout, if you will, which is sort of kind of like influence in the country. But if we go ahead and we bring the Catholics in, you can see the legitimacy of our government declines, because I guess the larger the government, the larger the sort of coalition, if you will, ruling, the less legitimacy perhaps that you have. It also makes it hard to you can't please everybody. So, you know, when you're looking at policies and things like that, it's hard to make everybody happy. It is worth noting, though, that because the armed forces and the landowners make up less than 50% of sort of our clout, it could make things more difficult when it comes to passing laws, because we don't have a majority per se of clout. Do we have a bureaucratic deficit? I'm not sure we do. We didn't last time we started. I'm not quite sure if all this stuff is normalized yet. We might have to run the game for a few days to kind of get some of these stats and whatnot to figure out what they exactly are. Like the budget, it does tell us we've got a national budget surplus at the moment of 10.4 thousand. You can see here our expenses, our revenue sources. It looks like the majority of our revenue is from poll taxes, which are, I believe, are like the same thing as a head tax, where it's a tax on like each individual pays a certain amount of money to the government just for essentially existing. So it kind of is, if you will, a regressive tax in the sense where the least well off are the most harmed by it. We do have some income taxes, so there is that, but the majority of our income comes from poll taxes at 15,000. There also are tariffs, which are a pretty minor part of our economy at the moment. We don't have a ton of trade going. We'll want to increase that. And then we have minting, which is, I guess, just like making new money. It doesn't portray this as being an inflationary problem. It just says that the larger your economy, the more money can be minted without compromising the economy, which like is true. We also do have a gold mine in Bajío, which is, and I'm sorry guys, I'm not great with pronunciations of some of these names, but you can see here this province just northwest of Mexico City has a gold mine, so that does help us when it comes to printing money. You know, we have actual gold backing up our economy. We're not going to look too much at buildings yet. What I want to do first is I want to just kind of stabilize the front in Texas, if you will. So we are at war in Texas at the start of this game. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually get some soldiers on the front line there, because right now no one's fighting here. You can see we've got negative 100%, you know, disadvantage to us, if you will. That's because we have no troops on the front. And the enemy does. So let's go ahead and do that first. You can see on the top right, here are our current commanders. We've got Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna and then Juan Alvarez, two different generals. Santa Anna can raise up to 8 battalions under his command, regular infantry battalions, and then Alvarez can raise up to 2. So we're going to go ahead and hit this mobilize button, and Santa Anna's 8 regular battalions of soldiers will begin mobilizing. We're going to go ahead and have him a defend front option and send him up to Texas. I don't want to mess with Texas. I just want to crush him. So I'm going to mobilize Juan Alvarez's troops as well. He's got 2 battalions assigned to him. And we're also going to have him defend the Texas frontier. So we're going to go ahead and send 10 battalions of troops, 10,000 soldiers, up against the Texans. It looks like they have 6 battalions of troops, or about 6,000 soldiers. Combat is fairly abstracted. So that's kind of what you do, right? We raise the troops and we send them up there to fight. And then we can issue orders like advance the front, defend, or stand by, but that's kind of about it. Other than, you know, retiring generals. We can promote generals also. So this guy, Alvarez, is a brigadier general, which is a, you know, gives him a certain amount of ability of commanding troops. He can command up to 20 regular battalions or 40 conscript battalions. Whereas Santa Anna is a major general. He's a 2-star, if you will. And so he can command up to, 40 battalions and 80 conscript battalions? Not that we have anywhere near that many troops. Also, each general does have a popularity rating, so Santa Anna's popularity is neutral. Alvarez apparently is loved. He's loved because he's direct and brave. So people like him, but he's subservient to Santa Anna. And as I mentioned, Santa Anna recently out of power. He had been the ruler of Mexico briefly, and now our current ruler is ruling Mexico. But anyway, this is, I guess, the Alamo is about to happen. So yeah, let's do that. So we got those troops being raised, and we're going to send them up to the front lines. I'm going to go ahead and just move through a few days here. I'm never sure with these kind of games if like your deficits and your economy and everything is really what it says it is until you let things run for a bit. So I think we're safe if we just go ahead and hit the play button. You can see this timing up here, Friday morning, Friday night, Saturday morning. You can see the time up here. We're moving at ×3 speed at the moment. We're now up to January 6, 1836. And actually, one other thing we should do here, you can see empiricism is spreading, Napoleonic warfare is spreading, and lathe is spreading. So these are different like technologies that are sort of spreading throughout the world and are becoming known to us. And so that'll influence our ability to research them. Texas is beginning mobilization of their generals, presumably Sam Houston. Columbia District is improving relations with us, I guess. So they want to be cooperative with us. I believe this is British Columbia, so it is not the United States District of Columbia. It is British Columbia. But first things, let's go back to the technology here. You can see this is the tech tree. You've got a production tech tree, a military tech tree, and a society tech tree. There's also innovation that is generated. You get a base amount, you get an amount from your literacy rate, you get an amount having universities in your country, you know, a more intellectual population, if you will. And so those are all different things you can research. Society, for example, Mexico already has a fair amount of these things researched. You know, it's not like it's a left behind, you know, not part of sort of the world in terms of global trade. You know, it's not a backwater. Not in this game. You can see that it's already researched colonization, for example. There had been a Mexican empire earlier in its history. It actually, when it first became independent from Spain, I believe it formed an empire briefly before that empire fell, I guess. But you can see here we've researched international trade, centralization, international relations, law enforcement. And so we can research the next things in these trees, in these society trees. So we could go for mass communication, which would increase authority and lead to nationalism and labor movements. Also, it requires you to have a democracy. We've already researched medical degrees, so we could go down here and research pharmaceuticals, which will improve the max health system institution investment. We could research egalitarianism, which would increase the minimum expected standard of living. And there's a lot to talk about, guys, so I don't think we can just be like, let me show you everything before we start playing. But like, different pop groups have different expectations in terms of the standard of living, in terms of, you know, how lavishly their lives are, how much money they have, the sort of standard of living, if you will. And so that can be influenced by different things here. But yeah, military is obviously probably something we want to research, since we know that we're going to be fighting the United States presumably before too long. And also you can see some of these items when technology spreads to you, it speeds up research. So we have zero impact on technology progress of Napoleonic warfare, but we do have a 23 to 70 spread from the technology, for the technology coming to us. So you can see it'll only take about 7 to 11 months if we research that as sort of a level 1 tech. If we were to research paddle steamers over here, it's 17 months because that hasn't started to spread to us yet. And so there's a lot of things that go into it, but that'll actually take longer to research. This one is sort of already, we're becoming aware of it through the grapevine, if you will. Not what I'm going to research first, though. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to research a lathe. The reason I'm going to research a lathe is because I want to get to railroads. Railroads, the all-important industrial, or one of the all-important railroad industrial technologies in the age of Victoria, but especially important for Mexico. The reason for that, I believe anyway, again, I'm still very new to this, Mexico City is by far our largest city or province. The population there is almost 2 million. That's like close, well, it's about 1/4 of the total population of this entire country. Has fairly decent infrastructure compared to our other provinces. In any event, you can see 55 out of a potential, compared to Veracruz, which isn't a backwater either, of 14. You can see other places up here have less or more. A couple of them have more. But the reason I want to research railroads especially is because Mexico doesn't have a port. And so it's your access to the outside markets and your ability to improve the standard of living and other things like that depends on your ability to get goods to your people. You can produce some of those goods locally, but you also need to have access to markets. The way you get access to markets is outside markets is through shipping, ports. And so we do have a port already in Veracruz, but currently anything that we want to transfer or transit to the population, 1/4 of our population, is got to go across these really crummy roads. And I also am pretty certain that not a lot transits along these roads, but railways create, so shipping creates convoys, and railroads, oh my god, I forget the name of it, but there's a transit value for railroads that occurs across across land borders. So my plan is to make sure that Veracruz is a very modern and large seaport so that we can bring all these goods in and then link Mexico City up via rail to Veracruz to feed the demands of 1/4 or more of our population. And then obviously expanding in other parts of Mexico. Part of the problem is Mexico's pretty mountainous in some of these provinces, which presumably makes railroads fairly expensive. I don't want to overdo the economy or overheat things or get into a massive tailspin of budget, but that's sort of my logic behind why I want to make sure that we go railroads first. Also, it's convenient that the lathe is already sort of known to us, it's spreading to us, and so it'll only take 9 to 14 months to research the lathe. So go ahead and do that. Additionally, I don't think the war with Texas is going to be influenced by our access to Napoleonic tech. It'll probably be over before then, and so that technology is less immediately urgent. The lathe, you can see, will open up the ability to research mechanical tools because we've already unlocked steelworking. You need both of these sort of technologies to unlock mechanical tools. You can see these little lines here on the chart. And then once we research mechanical tools, next, then that will open up the ability to research railroads once we also research atmospheric engine. So that'll be sort of the next. We've already done shaft mining, so atmospheric engine is the next one. So we've got to research basically lathe, mechanical tools, atmospheric engine, and then railroads. Yes, France also occupies Mexico in the 1860s. Mexico is an interesting country in this era. I feel like we ignore it a lot in the United States, which is interesting considering our history. But Mexico fights a war against the Texas Republic. Mexico then fights a war with the United States, and they obviously didn't instigate this conflict, but the U.S. and Mexico fight a war in the Mexican-American War in 1848. So you've got the Texas War in 1836-37. You've got the American War in 1848. You've got the French intervention in 1864. So you've got a lot of action in the Victoria era, at least the early period of Mexican history. And there's a bunch of rebellions and whatnot that I don't know all of the details, but I know there was actually a separatist movement in the Yucatan Peninsula as well after the war with Texas. So it's a pretty active country, at least in the early part of the Victorian game. Okay, so that was a lot of me talking. We haven't been playing a whole lot here. Expensive military goods. So we're importing these, I believe. We need more convoys to feed our sugar export to France. Currently, we're using, we have 181 export convoys requested out of a maximum capacity of 200. So I'm not sure what the deal is with the sugar one. These convoy routes are just supposed to expand or shrink based on profitability. So if sugar is profitable and if there's a high demand, it's currently a level 1 trade route, but it can increase to level 3. We could also, I think, can we spend money to increase the trade route? I think it just increases to 3. Although you need 86 for a level 3. So we might not have enough convoys to increase the sugar export from 1 to 3. But it's a profitable export route at the moment. If we take a look at economics right now, goods with considerable potential for export, the main thing is dyes. Right now, we're already doing some trade with sugar, luxury clothes, and paper, as well as tools, small arms, artillery, and clippers. I believe most of that is all imports. We are importing clippers from the British market. We are importing artillery from the British market. We're importing small arms from the British market. No wonder. Great Britain is the tool shop of the world. We're importing tools from the Great Britain market, paper from the Great Britain market, luxury clothes from the Great Britain market. We don't have a trade route currently, it looks like, from dyes, but we could export that. Well, that's an import route. Wait, are these export? I'm confused. Mexico's importing 25 luxury goods with 1 import trade route. Yeah, so these are import routes. We're not exporting anything, but we could. Those are other countries with trade routes. Okay. And then sugar. Laurier to Veracruz. Oh, we are exporting dyes with 1 export trade route. It's just not I guess a Mexican route. Maybe it's not being run by our clippers. In any event, we do have considerable export potential for dyes and import potential. We need to import more grain, more clothes, furniture, fabric, and wood. We'll get a little bit more into that later. We also do have a bureaucracy deficit, which I've played this game a couple times, and I'm guessing maybe just because I changed the settings, maybe that's why our bureaucracy is not efficient at the moment. Because it wasn't a deficit last time I played. Which I believe you get more bureaucracy by expanding your governmental buildings. If I do expand this, we don't have enough qualified staff to fully equip it. We don't have enough bureaucrats, clergymen, or clerks. So if we build a new building, academics and clergymen are needed for a university. I don't know if the music's remastered or not. A thing. By the way, Scout, thank you for the follow. Psych, thank you for the follow. Wander, thank you for the follow. Newhauser, thank you for the resub. Connect, thank you for the follow. Swivel, thank you for the follow. Polymork, thank you for the follow. Apple to Games, thank you for the follow. Mr. Ensman, thank you for the follow. Benj, thanks for the follow. I think I got you guys all. I don't know exactly what to do with the economy right now, but we need more bureaucrats. Currently we're doing simple, basic production methods, simple. So it creates bureaucracy. I don't know. I'm just going to say let's expand it and worry about the shortage later. It'll also use up our construction. So we currently, if you go to the buildings construction tab here, there's a construction sector in your economy, and you have a certain amount of construction as sort of a resource that you can use to build things. And that'll ensure that we're not wasting our construction by building nothing. And you can expand your construction sector by building more construction buildings, but resources and things like that are fairly expensive, so you don't want to over-expand your construction sector. Currently, our construction sector, I believe, is focused on wooden buildings, which I think you can change that. So base production method is using wood, but if we wanted to change that to iron frame buildings, we could. It would make things much more expensive. We probably don't want to do that yet. It would also increase employment of machinists and reduce sort of basic laborers. So those are all things to consider. But we do want to kind of fight the war against Texas first before we worry too much about all that stuff. Also, we have interests in different sort of sectors or different regions, if you will. And currently it looks like our interest in the Great Plains is waning. So we're just going to declare our interest in the Great Plains again to sort of make sure everybody knows we want that. We want that area. It influences international relations and things like that, which maybe that's a bad thing to do. It'll piss off the U.S. All right. So I think our armies are on the way. Looks like 3 days for Santa Ana, 7 for Alvarez. So we'll just go ahead and unpause. And wait for our troops to get there. Netherlands and France have declared their rivals. Okay, so let's pause here. Our 10 battalions have arrived on the front with the Texans. We apparently claim we have an advantage now, given our manpower advantage. And so I'm going to switch these guys' orders over from defensive posture to an offensive posture. There's only one front line. In bigger wars, you can have multiple fronts, but currently the only front line in this conflict is the... What is it? The Texas-Utah front, I guess. So those guys are going to move to the front, and then there will be a countdown here that will proceed to 100. When you get to 100, we will begin attacking Sam Houston's 6 battalions of Texas soldiers. Oh, shit. Someone just declared us their rival? New Grenada declared rivalry. Their attitude toward us is antagonistic. Ah. I hate these. All right. So New Grenada's down here. I don't think I have to worry about them at the moment. Their economy is much smaller than ours. Their population is much smaller than ours. They do have a lot more soldiers than we do, but they don't have a navy. So unless they take over Central America first, I don't think I've got to worry about them. All right, we're spending a lot of money importing small arms. Okay. Let's just fight this war first. All right, so we got a battle going here, and it looks like we might be losing. Why are we only deploying 5 of our battalions here? That's what I'm a little confused on. I don't understand how the game decides to deploy soldiers. Why we're choosing to only use half the soldiers that we have, half the battalions that we have. Like, you're already there, guys. But we're losing this battle. Slowly but surely, you can see this progress bar here. So both units are using careful maneuver. The Americans, or I guess the Texans, are on the defensive. They have a 33 value of their defensive. We are on the offense. Oh, shit. Something just happened. And now we're about to win. I guess we destroyed one of their battalions because they dropped from 4 to 3, and now things have changed. The defensive value moved over. I don't know what happened. But Take that, Texas. Gold discovered in California. What? Hell yeah. That might be bad long term in terms of getting the Americans interested, but California's ours, boys. Goldfields. Value of 21.4 pounds a year. That's it? Wouldn't it kind of be more than that? That feels like a very small amount for gold. It's the 36th most productive building in the world. 704% productivity to the average building. I would assume that might also pull in laborers to California, which could help our colonization of the West. Because right now it's pretty sparse. 2,000 employees. The laborers are struggling. But this should be a profitable venture for them. As they make more money, their standard of living can move up. They spend their standard of living on goods and things like that. Minting plus 206, though, for basic production for the gold field. So it does increase our minting. If we go to our budget here, you can see 206 from the California gold fields and then 1,500. Holy crap. In that province in Mexico proper. So that does help the economy there. And this is national revenue, I believe. Is this per year? But our budget, our balance and budget are going up, so that's good. Give my people gold. Anyway, back to the war with Texas. Good. 12 years before the historical Mexican-American War, we can maybe empty out the gold reserves in California before the U.S. gets involved. Meanwhile, you can see these Texas battalions were exhausted. We did lose a fair bit of strength. Our morale was 28% in our battalions at the end of the battle, but the enemy dropped to 0. Sam Houston failed in his defensive, and we took 13 provinces here in Texas. These are little different regions. The more decisive battles are, the more regions you take sort of at once, if you will. And so we did manage a victory, and now there's another battle. So basically the way the war unfolds is it's just going to keep sort of progressing until the war is over. And I feel like in this game, once you get momentum going, at least in this war, because the Texans I don't believe are going to throw any more troops at us. Once you get momentum going, it's really hard for your opposition to turn things around. It looks like the Texans are fighting with conscripts. We're fighting with regular troops, so that probably helps us. But yeah, this is just going to be a steamroll effect as we take more and more of Texas. You can see we took another 13 provinces here. You can see the Mexican flag representing our advance through Texas. It still says they have 5 battalions, but these are going to be exhausted battalions. They're not going to be full strength battalions. If we actually go to this tab here, we take a look at the mobilized troops fighting under Santa Anna, we can actually see the different battalions here. So these are no, that's not what I was looking for. There's a way to see your battalions. So we've got the 3rd, 4th, and 5th line infantry units that are mobilized and currently fighting. You can see their strength. A full strength battalion is 1,000 men. So we are losing or taking casualties, if you will. 600 on this one, 700 on this one. These Veracruz soldiers that have been mobilized also are all taking by the way, when it says regular troops in Veracruz, that's their barrack location, sort of where they're regularly garrisoned when you're not at war. But they're all currently assigned to the conflict here, and you can see they take casualties and attrition as the war goes on. Oh, that was kind of glitching and wigging out. And once they're not at war, once they're no longer fighting, or if you will, they will gradually regain their strength. The problem Texas has is they lost that first battle, and so while they do still come into each one of these battles with 3 or 4 battalions, and we're coming in with a few battalions as well, our strength from that first battle was overwhelming them, and they don't have time to draw in more reserves. So these are the same units that are fighting over and over again, even though the battalion levels aren't really dropping. Petty bourgeoisie activated. This is due to their approval of Happy. plus 10% bureaucrats. Hey, we've got a bureaucratic surplus now. Yay. That's good. Bureaucracy is really important to the efficient running of your economy, by the way. No, Captain, the war, you started war, so I didn't even get an option of not fighting. American attitude of us is antagonistic. Yeah, well, they don't hate me. Well, they do hate me. Hopefully they don't intervene for a while. You can see up here, this is the war score at the moment. So currently the war support for the war in Mexico is 93%. Texas is negative 17%. So they are, once they get to negative 100, I believe, or 0. Actually, it's negative. So I assume once they get to negative 100, they will capitulate. Remember, this is like a Texas War of Independence. It's not really a war with the Texas Republic. Texas is trying to secede, and we are trying to crush them. Lame. Some people, and some Mexican people, let's pause this. Some Mexican people are unfairly blaming the poor living condition in Sonora on their Otaham neighbors. They say we have taken all the jobs, that we make it impossible for them to earn a fair wage, but we suffer just as much as them. So, we can all learn to live together. What is my authority right now anyway? Capacity to efficient internal change in your country. I don't even know what my authority is at the moment. Up here. 656. So 100 for base oligarchy, 200 for oligarchy, 50 for cultural exclusion, 200 for state religion, 100 for censorship, negative 25 popularity of Miguel Agrarian. So the leader is not very popular. Mexico gets work on cultural rift. Reduces authority for 5 years. If we ignore it, what happens? Negative 1 standard of living, modifier and Odom to Sonora. Live together. I'll take the hit. I want my people living peacefully, and I don't need another revolution. Party commissar, I have not heard that. Granted, I'm not like super in the meta right now with all the other folks and what they're playing and who's strongest or not. That would seem a little off if well, I guess it depends. Like, are you saying they have the potential to be the strongest? Because I could see that argument if you effectively manage them. This was an era in which the government in China did not effectively manage its resources. In a few cases, very like, wasn't there a regent in China at the moment who like built a marble, essentially like a marble battleship or something like that for her palace in like the middle of a lake? Yeah, I mean, if a player's in control and they know not to do, with hindsight and all, not to do crazy stuff. What is this? Texas is offering me a peace deal. There's a proposed peace deal in the war and part of the law. What's the peace deal? Return Texas. Texas returns the state of Texas to Mexico. Demanding this results in 3.7 infamy. So are they surrendering? Screw that. Let's occupy the whole damn thing. It's probably not good, like, to oh, there you go. They fully capitulated. Unconditional surrender. Nice try, tricksters. Texas is ours once more. I did take a Chinese history course, Pluto. I vaguely remember that. But yeah, I took a Chinese history course in college. So I know a few random facts. All right, so Texas is now part of Mexico again, as it rightly should be. All right, where's the option to build a wall? Got to keep the Americans out. Davy Crockett died anyway, didn't he? Habitual? Didn't he die at the Alamo? All right, so Mexico is whole and full again. Yay! Hooray! We have a bunch of First Nation tribes, if you will, the Comanche, Apache, Navajo, and Ute, all sort of preventing us from having a nice clean map. There's a little bit of border gore on the border there, but overall good news. And now, since we won this war, the 8th battalions under Santa Anna are actually just automatically going to demobilize. They're heading back to their Mexico HQ. Juan Alvarez's troops are heading back to their Central American HQ in the Yucatan, which is actually a good thing because, as I said before, there was a historical rebellion in the Yucatan Peninsula and an independence movement there. I don't really see, in theory, we could promote Santa Anna for being successful in leading this war, but I don't know that it does any good. I don't need him to command more troops, so why promote him? All right, meanwhile, technology research. Where are we on the lathe? 3 to 5 more months. How's our construction going? We're still building that stuff. We haven't expanded. So what's the port? The port is currently... Oh my God, I can't remember. What did I build? It was a government building. 18 more weeks on the government building in Mexico City. Okay. You can see, by the way, you can check out your different cultures in Mexico. So Catholic is obviously the predominant religion in Mexico. You can see there's some turmoil. I guess different cultures have turmoil. There is an Afro-American culture group in Mexico. It's a pretty small group. It's about 7,000 folks. They are heavily focused in Texas. They're definitely struggling. Afro-American culture is discriminated in Mexico, although Mexico did abolish slavery shortly before this time period starts. And that was actually part of the tensions, and one of the reasons that Texas wanted to secede is while slavery was abolished in Mexico previous to this, a lot of sort of the American folks who were settling in Texas were just flouting that and ignoring that. And periodically the Mexican government would kind of come in and try and enforce the abolition, and it, not popular from the Texas individuals. So they're currently oppressed, if you will, in Texas. Does it say they're struggling? They're at 8 standard of living. There are 8,000 of them. The majority of them are laborers. There are some peasants. They're politically inactive, so they don't support an interest group. Okay. So they're the really only group that has any sort of level of turmoil in their culture group. No nations can form in Texas right now. Citizenship exists on cultural exclusion. So they have to share a culture trait with primary cultures. So it's not a multicultural society, it's a cultural exclusive society. Dixie also exists. They're also in turmoil. Dixie, I'm assuming, being Southern Americans, if you will. You can see where they're prevalent, but also in Texas. Principally only in Texas. Dude, that old lady holding that butcher's knife. Oh my God. Scary. It's like out of a horror movie. All right, so we have a population now that we've reconquered Texas. Population in Texas, by the way, about 80,000. We have now exceeded 7 million in terms of our total population. Only 1.7 million of them are politically active. The majority of that politically active group is peasants, 1.2 million. The majority of our population is peasants. Politically inactive are 5.28 million, so the majority of our population, as I said, politically inactive. Impoverishment is 10.4. It started at 10.3, I think, so maybe going up a little. The lower strata are at 9.6, middle are at 20.3, and upper at 20.7. Minimum expectations for each of those groups is listed out here. don't really have a sense at the moment. It does look like that is ticking up slightly, at least for the minute medium, maybe not the upper. These time scales are all too short to make much of what's happening. Whole bunch of graphs and windows if you want to look at that. We can also patronize romanticism. So we've got a journal entry and active decision, I guess, option. I don't know what that will do for me. We'll complete if any Mexican building is an arts academy, traditional art, occupancy is greater than 90%, and the building is level 2 or equal to 2 or greater. Okay. No, weenie. Well, I guess, yeah, we did take the Alamo back. Yay. Toa, when's that supposed to leave beta? I do want to play that. All right, so I don't have a lot else to do at the moment, I don't think, anyway. Let's see. Trade routes need convoys. Yeah, trade routes. I don't have convoys. I need to expand a port to get more convoys, to get more clippers. But we don't have enough construction. I'm really nervous about overheating our economy. But we are going to go ahead and expand our construction sector. Let's build it in Veracruz, because right now we've got one construction sector in Mexico, nothing in Veracruz, so we'll do that. It's going to take 25 weeks. And then we are also going to expand the port in Veracruz. There's an economy of scale thing here. So like in theory, you could build new ports or new buildings or things like that, but you're actually better off expanding buildings rather than just building 2. So like, I guess 2 level 1 buildings are less productive than a single level 2 building. I don't know if that influences developmental buildings, because you might only have 1 port in a region or a state. 73 weeks. Ugh. But that's probably because we're building too much. With our construction sector already maxed out. So it's kind of spreading. Oh, it hasn't slowed anything down though. So I need more clippers. So we need more ports. And I prefer Veracruz as our primary port because it's on the Gulf Coast. So it puts it in much closer direct contact with the main productive economies at the moment in terms of industrial production, primarily in Britain, but also some of the goods we need are from France. Yeah, party. I hope Ultimate Admiral gets there. I don't know. Honestly, I had really high hopes at that game when it first started, and it just sort of languished for so long, and I've played it a little bit since, and it just feels like I'd rather go play Rule the Waves. Like, I wonder if the simplicity of Rule the Waves is actually part of the selling point, as opposed to, like, just adding on layers to Ultimate Admiral, maybe not, I don't know, making things what I would hope. All right, we have 1 battalion in reserve. So 10 with generals, 1 in garrison. We have 11 regular units now. I'm assuming one of these is in Texas, I believe, because I believe we have a barracks in Texas. Every barracks has 1 battalion of soldiers, so we do have a size 2 barracks in Texas. The 11th Dixie Line Infantry, 515 men demobilized. Do we really want them? Like, maybe we should, can we disband them? Destroy the barracks in Texas? I don't want them rising up against me. Okay. An unproductive trade route. Paper from British markets. So we're losing money on that trade route. Okay. Do we want to kill it? We still need the paper though, right? So if I were to open a trade route, 18 convoys are available to do this. To export dyes. The most productive market for us to export dyes to are the French market. You can see productivity here in terms of value. So let's do that. Started an export trade route for dyes. One Mexican trade route. France. Current market conditions are going to stay at 1. Thanks for the sub, Weenie. Appreciate it. Lord Polish Lax Slayer. Thank you for the follows. I'm probably going to be overly cautious with things and not fiddle too much in overbuilding, but we'll see. So we're exporting dyes. The price for artillery has dropped, which is good because we're importing it. The price for small arms has dropped, which is good because we're importing it. And the price for wine has dropped slightly. Okay. Are we doing anything diplomatically right now? We've declared interest in the Great Plains. We have no active diplomatic plays. We're currently improving relations with Colombia. We've got a rivalry with Grenada. Can we improve relations with the US to head off any potential war? The answer to that is probably no, but we'll find out more next time. That's going to do it for today's episode. This is my first look at Victoria 3, the new game out by Paradox Interactive. The game comes out, I believe, at 9 o'clock Central Time-ish, around there. I'm not sure exactly. But this was taken from a live stream from yesterday from my Twitch channel. We'll be continuing this series tonight, maybe during the day as well. We'll see. I'll post a video on my Twitch or on my YouTube if I'm streaming during the day. But yeah, we streamed for almost 5 hours, so this is just the first part of that. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please leave your thoughts down below. Catch you guys at the end. And until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching, and I'm out.